Good evening, crime aficionados. Tonight, I'm diving into a case that shook the very core of justice. A case shrouded in mystery, filled with controversy, and ultimately a story of wrongful conviction and redemption. I'm talking about the haunting case of the West Memphis Three. Let's set the stage. It's May 1993 in West Memphis, Arkansas. Three young boys, Stephen Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore, were found murdered, their bodies discarded in a small creek. The brutality of the crime left the community in fear. But what followed? What followed was a rush to judgment, a search for answers that led to a haunting injustice. At first, the police had no leads, but a local teen, Damian Eccles, an 18-year-old with a reputation for being a little different, became their target. He wore dark clothes, listened to heavy metal, and had an interest in the occult. In a town that valued conformity, this was enough. Add to that the fact that Damian's two friends, Jesse Miskelly and Jason Baldwin, were also outcasts, and the stage was set for what would become a tragic miscarriage of justice. Here's where the case took a dark turn. With little to no physical evidence linking the trio to the crime, the police relied on Jesse Miskelly's confession. A confession that was riddled with contradictions, inaccuracies, and claims that didn't match the crime scene. But in a highly suggestive, pressured interrogation, Jesse, who had an intellectual disability, was coerced into signing a statement. This was all the police needed. A confession, flawed as it was, seemed enough to convict three young men. They were charged with the brutal murders of the three boys. Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly, now known as the West Memphis Three, were sentenced to death and life in prison. The community was divided, some convinced of their guilt, others outraged by the lack of real evidence. But here's where the story takes a turn that no one saw coming. In 2007, nearly 14 years after the conviction, new DNA evidence came to light. DNA that did not match any of the three men. There were traces found on the victims' bodies, and it was clear that these new findings couldn't have been ignored. The truth started to emerge. The West Memphis Three were wrongfully convicted, and there was more. In 2011, after years of legal battles, a breakthrough, they were finally freed. It wasn't just the DNA evidence. The case had been tainted from the start. New revelations pointed to the real killer or killers, and what's more disturbing is how the police had overlooked key details. Details that should have been pursued from the very beginning. How much damage had been done by false accusations, false confessions, and the wrongful conviction of three innocent boys. But here's where it gets even more haunting. The entire trial, the way it unfolded, was a spectacle. It was as if the justice system had failed before the case even went to court. The West Memphis Three were imprisoned, their lives shattered, while the true identity of the killer remained elusive. In the end, thanks to the tireless efforts of supporters, activists, and a growing movement for justice, the West Memphis Three were finally exonerated. Their release was celebrated, but the scars of their wrongful conviction would last forever. The case was reopened, but the questions still linger. How could this happen in America? How many more cases like this exist? This case isn't just about three innocent men, it's about the flawed justice system that failed them. It's about how prejudice, panic, and misinformation can ruin lives. And it's about how a group of passionate individuals, a relentless pursuit of truth, and a whole lot of luck can sometimes, just sometimes, right a devastating wrong. Next time you hear a story about a crime, remember the West Memphis Three. Remember how easily it could have been anyone, and how the pursuit of justice is not always straightforward. It's a haunting reminder that truth, no matter how elusive, will always find its way to the surface, even if it takes years. That's all for tonight, crime enthusiasts. I'll see you next time as we unravel another case that will keep you on the edge of your seat.